Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up for the week ending November 23rd. First, I have been reading and really enjoying Matt Haig's newest novel, The Life Impossible. This is the book choice for my in-person book group, and I will talk in more detail about this novel after we have met to discuss it. We're going to be talking about the book in the first week of December. I've been on a real Matt Haig kick lately. I think he's something of a comfort read for me. This is the story of a retired math teacher named Grace Winter, who has suffered some really horrible losses in her life. She's recently widowed. She's lost her husband, Carl, but long before that, she lost her only son, Daniel, to a terrible accident. So she's led a really tragic and lonely life in recent years. When the novel opens, she mysteriously is notified that she has been left a house on a Mediterranean island, and she's been left this house by a friend and a former colleague, but it's someone that she hasn't been in touch with for decades. So it's very, very mysterious to suddenly hear about this. And then in an uncharacteristically adventurous move, Grace decides to pick up her life and go to this island with no real plan as to what she's going to do once she gets there. The novel is told in the epistolary form. It starts out as a letter that she receives from a former student, a young man who has come by some hard times, and she starts a correspondence with him. And so the story gets told in the form of letters between the two of them. I'm going to talk more about this novel after my group has had a chance to get together and talk about it. I've also been reading this week the second novel that we're reading in the Pinero Project, where we're reading all of the works of Claudia Pinero in translation. Right now, we're reading Time of the Flies. This is a sequel to the novel that we read the first 2 weeks of November, and that was All Yours, which I've talked about here on the channel. In All Yours, our main character, Inez, a woman scorned by her philandering husband, seeks revenge. Well, now it's 15 years later, and we pick up with Inez's story again. We're reading this novel over the next couple of weeks, and we're just starting to discuss it in our Voxer group. Again, I'll talk more about this after our group has had a chance to really dig in and have our conversation about it. Our group, though, has been really, really taken by Pinero's style. She's known as an Argentinian crime writer. And all of her novels, while they deal with often terrible crimes, they also deal with really important social issues, and in particular issues related to the role of women in Argentinian society. I've also been reading for Chekhovember the works of Anton Chekhov. We read 2 plays. We read The Seagull and The Cherry Orchard, which I read in this volume. And this week we read a novella called Ward Number 6, which I read in this volume. And in the last week of November, we're going to read two short stories. So this week we read Ward Number 6. This is a haunting story of a doctor in a provincial town in Russia. He's in charge of this hospital, and most of the action revolves around the psychiatric ward of this hospital, Ward Number 6. Early in his career, the doctor is young and idealistic and very engaged by his work at the hospital, and idealistic about what he's going to be able to do for patients. But during most of the course of this novella, when most of the action of the story takes place, he is very uninvolved in the work of the hospital, and he spends most of his time at home reading. We get a sketch of each of the 5 patients on this psychiatric ward, and we also get a sketch of a former soldier named Nikita, who is the prison. He acts like he's in a prison. He's the hospital ward guard. He is a brutal and punishing presence in the hospital. I struggle with the Russian names, but in my translation, I believe the doctor's name is Andrei Yefimich Rogin, I think is how it's pronounced, or Reagan. I'm really not sure, and I apologize for what I'm sure are mispronunciations. He does go to visit the ward, the psych ward, one day in the hospital, and he becomes engaged in a conversation with one of the 5 patients, one Ivan Gromov. And this patient is basically suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, but he's often quite lucid and able to engage in very serious and coherent and intelligent conversation. And the doctor becomes really entranced by this patient and just fascinated by their conversation. And he starts visiting this patient to talk with him every day, because he feels that the conversation that he's having with this paranoid schizophrenic patient is the most intelligent conversation that he has anywhere. Well, things take a very dark turn for the doctor, and that's all I'm going to say about this for now. For most of the story, the doctor believes that his life really is meaningless, that it doesn't have meaning or value. He does not believe that he has any impact whatsoever on the patients in his care, and so he really stops providing care. His life begins to feel as though it has meaning only as he becomes engaged in conversation with this one patient. It's a very dark story about human suffering and human neglect. And I guess it's about the search for meaning in what can feel like a meaningless existence. I'm not in a good enough frame of mind right now for reading Russian existentialist fiction, I think. We have a week to go in Chekhovember, and we're going to be reading 2 short stories in the coming week. I think I would be naive at this point to wish for something more hopeful in these stories, but I will certainly let you know next week. I also completed my reread this week of Shakespeare's Othello, which was the play of the month for the Bard Room in the Discord channel of Melinda at A Web of Stories, where they're reading a different Shakespeare play each month. Othello is one of maybe my top 5 Shakespeare plays. I really, really love this play, and it is one of the great tragedies. This is the story of the Moorish general Othello, his wife Desdemona, and perhaps the greatest villain Shakespeare ever created, Iago, who is an ensign of Othello. For reasons that are never absolutely clear, Iago sets about on a path to destroy the lives of all of the rest of the main characters in the play. But most notably, he sets out to destroy the life of Othello and his wife Desdemona. There are issues of race in the play. Othello is a black man who marries a white woman against the wishes of her father, the Duke of Venice. Certainly, jealousy is also a major theme of the play, and there's plenty of that to go around. Iago is jealous of Othello, perhaps because he's the general, perhaps because he has the love of Desdemona. He also hates Othello for passing him over for the job of lieutenant, which was given instead to one named Cassio. Rodrigo is another character in the play who is also jealous of Othello because he had hoped to marry Desdemona himself and was prevented from doing so by her father. But none of this really quite explains the motivation of Iago, who sets about planting seeds of suspicion and doubt in all of the other characters, just enough so that he himself always looks blameless. And they, all of these other characters mentioned, they set about destroying one another. This is the greatest portrait of villainy that I can think of in literature, rivaling John Milton's Satan in Paradise Lost. Iago plays on each character's fears and weaknesses in order to design the most catastrophic results. Maybe it was just the right time for me to reread this play. I'm not sure, but it positively blew me away this time around. I also read this week a new book by one of my favorite poets, and that's Billy Collins, and his new book was released just this week, and that's Water, and I did a Poetry Thursday episode on this collection. This volume did not disappoint. I've talked about Billy Collins in several videos on the channel in the past 9 months or so. I did a Poetry Thursday episode on him back in April for National Poetry Month, and I had done some poetry shorts on him as well. This volume is right up there with the very best that he has written. I was most struck by the ways in which the poems in this volume speak to the aging process Billy Collins is now 83 years old. And they also, some of them speak to the awareness of the poet of his own mortality. Finally, I wanted to just take a moment to showcase a few gifts that arrived this week in the mail from my dear friend Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. If you know Alan, then you know that he is an extraordinarily talented artist. And these are a few paintings that he sent me this week. This one he calls Pat's Dream. And this is a copy of a painting that he did for Faulkner in August this year. And this is one that he painted on Halloween for me, Pat's House. And he also sent me some cool little stickers too. Trade Up Music, Portland, Oregon. And got a little pumpkin here. Dr. Jolly's, Oregon, and Disco. Alan collects and trades stickers. But these paintings are just really, really beautiful. And I thank you, Alan. I thank you for sending these to me. I am going to have them framed, and they will have a very special place in my home. And please know how very grateful I am for your friendship, which is so precious to me. So that is my wrap up for this week. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.